Welcome back. The General Services Administration has a new purchase card limit through its Smart Pay program. The old limit was $10,000. The new limit is $1. Alan Thomas is owner of AlphaTango Strategies. He's former commissioner of the Federal Acquisition Service at GSA. Alan, welcome. Thanks for joining me. What's your sense of what's behind that cut? That's pretty significant and is putting people, I imagine, inside the agency in quite a bind.
It's a limit, right, that they put on. The agency's trying to get control of spend, right? I mean, there's an old rule, one of the best ways to get control of an organization is to get control of what it's, what it's spending, right? And so the limit, I think, and there is, by the way, a review and approval process, right, to be able to go above the limit, because you can't buy much for $1, which I think is part of the point. But really, it's a tactic to kind of get control of the spend within the agency and make sure that there's a proper review of what's going through the card program.
GSA is encouraging other agencies to do the same thing, but it's not mandating that they do the same thing. What's the potential impact of that on the agencies and the way they get things, and on the vendors that sell to the agencies through the purchase card program if that happens?
Yeah, so there could be some mission impacts, right, if other agencies were to adopt that dollar limit. It really depends on what's that review and approval process to be able to buy mission critical things with the card that you need, right? What does that look like? How burdensome is that? Is that something that's quick and easy or not? You take an agency like a VA, a Veterans Affairs, for example, they rely on the card quite a bit to operate hospitals. And so if there was a lengthy, burdensome review process there, right, if VA did adopt this limit, and they have not to my knowledge yet, but if they did, that could have some mission impact on VA. Vendors are obviously concerned about it also, right? There are a number of vendors out there who do, who kind of rely on the government purchase card. And so they, I think the hair on the back of their neck is up a bit, right, on this. But my sense is, take a breath, don't overreact. I do think it's part of this broader effort, right, of DOGE, and DOGE sees GSA really as a key node to kind of get control of spending in the government. So my sense is that's why it was put in place. There's going to be a review period. There probably will be some changes to the Smart Pay program, which GSA runs and administers on behalf of the government. And I think this is sort of part and parcel of that look that the new team is doing.
In addition to the spending control, is it possible that part of the effort here is to determine what people are using the purchase card on that maybe they don't need to if they would use other vehicles, or is that data already knowable? Does that data already exist somewhere?
No, you would think that data does exist. It doesn't, right? In fact, GSA started kind of a special program called the Commercial Platforms Program with a few vendors, and part of the impetus for that program was to get better control of data going through the purchase card program. So there is probably a data component to it as well that I think you could see sort of become part of a revamped Smart Pay program.
Another revamp that we're hearing about is potentially changes to the Federal Acquisition Regulation to kind of wrap around all of those kinds of changes. What does that look like in your view?
Correct. I think if you're kind of reading the tea leaves, right, you've seen some of the press releases come out of GSA where they've recently issued a couple of deviations to the FAR to sort of get in line with some of the president's executive orders, particularly around DEI programs. My sense is, just from reading those, that there could be a whole series of changes that GSA would like to champion within the FAR, and it could pair nicely. There's some proposed legislation on the Hill called the Forged Act, which Senator Wicker put out. It's DOD focused, but there is a big component in there around buying much more like a commercial entity. You could see those two things sort of get paired together, but my sense is you could see some big changes coming, big proposed changes in the FAR. Now look, the FAR is a regulation. Some of it's regulatory. You can change it relatively quickly through the rulemaking process. I say quickly in Washington time. Some of it's statutory, right, that's in the FAR. So that you would need legislation to change there.
We have about a minute left. One of the things that the first Trump administration was known for was consolidating the vehicles by which agencies could buy stuff. Do you expect to see more of that? What's left to consolidate? Because a lot of consolidation happened, as I said, the first time around.
I think you may see some of that, right? If you're looking for overlap and duplication, right, there's a whole suite of government-wide vehicles at GSA like Alliant and Oasis. There's NASA SOUP. There's the CIOSP set of vehicles out of NIH NITAC. There's even things at the service level like Army MAPS, which they're working on. If you were to draw a Venn diagram of the scope of all those acquisition vehicles, Francis, there would be a lot of overlap. And so if you're looking for reducing duplication, that's an easy area. It's also, I think, a good way to control spend. Fewer vehicles means it's easier to figure out who's spending money on what.
Is it easier for the vendors and therefore cheaper for the vendors and therefore cheaper for the government if that happens too?
Absolutely, right? Vendors spend a lot of bid and proposal money, right? And if you're having to bid on a lot of these government-wide things that have overlapping scope, right? No one feels like they can sit them out, right? So they spend the B&P money. That B&P money just gets built back into rates that get charged to the government.
Alan Thomas, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You